Welcome back to the Argentina Project podcast at the Wilson Center's Latin American program. I'm your host, Benjamin Gedan. My guest today is David Smith, the Economist Argentina correspondent and a special contributor to our Argentina Project. David joins us to discuss the relationship between Mendoza, Argentina's famed wine-growing province, with the national government, which has become so strained of late that some Mendocinos are calling for a Mendo exit. David, thank you so much for joining us.
A pleasure.
We have been hearing from the Argentine province of Mendoza a growing demand for a Mendo exit. That's been the social media hashtag after the former governor and influential Mendoza politician, Alfredo Cornejo, expressed great frustration with Mendoza's relationship with the Argentine central government, which of course is from the Peronist party. The former governor is the leader of the historic Radical Party in Argentina. David, just first tell us, what are the current roots of these tensions? And then we'll get into a bit of history between this province and the central government.
Well, the immediate trigger for this, Benjamin, has been a move by the national government, the government of Alberto Fernandez and Cristina Fernandez de Kirchner, the former president, who's now the vice president. A move by the government in recent days to really put a halt to a major development project in the southern half, in the southern end of the province of Mendoza, a mega dam. It was called the mega work of the century for Mendoza, a hydroelectric dam taking in the Rio Colorado and the Rio Grande in the south of Mendoza, which does affect the water of four other provinces. The other provinces are controlled by Peronists, and Mendoza is one of the very few provinces controlled by a non-Peronist. Governor Cornejo, the last governor, now replaced by Rodolfo Suarez, Radical Party leaders, so opposition. And the belief in Mendoza, certainly amongst the Radical Party leadership, led by Cornejo and Governor Suarez, is that this is persecution of Mendoza, that the bloc on funding this huge mega work, the electric dam, the Windy Gap Dam, that could bring electricity and so much more to tens of thousands of homes in Mendoza, and which has been on the works for 14, 15 years, and in fact was very much the product of the late Néstor Kirchner when he was president in 2006. So the feeling in Mendoza, the trigger, has been this sense that we're being victimized because we have a non-Peronist leadership and they're starving us of resources, and now they're going to prevent us going ahead with a project that was due to make Mendoza's future look very different. And going ahead because those other provinces involved in this project are now seeking an environmental impact study that could take ages to resolve.
Now, David, that's not the only criticism from the Mendocino authorities directed at the Peronists currently occupying the Casa Rosada. I understand there's also complaints of unfair and politicized coronavirus aid. That a province such as Tucumán, whose governor is quite close, is that not an issue here?
Yes, it is absolutely. I use the word, the trigger point has been this argument over the super dam in the south of Mendoza. But equally at the same time, the long-standing grievance of Mendoza, that the province puts more into the national budget than it gets back. And remember, we have a federalist system here, so the national government distributes to the provinces, and typically over coronavirus, the province of Mendoza has spent as others have, and is witnessing. I mean, the one that's used in Mendoza I hear frequently is the fact that it's receiving about a third of what a Peronist province, Tucumán, is receiving for dealing with the pandemic. And this is a symbol, but it's an important financial one, and particularly given the crisis of the pandemic and the way the country's been shut down. It's a symbol of the way that Mendocinos feel that they're being victimized, discriminated against is the word used, putting in much more than they receive back from the central state. And this, of course, is the font of any number of cultural attitude and, in a sense, the feeling of being victimized.
Now, how much of this, though, is politics? I mean, Alfredo Cornejo, who we hosted at the Wilson Center not long ago, is a key opposition figure in Argentina and an ambitious politician himself. How much of this is genuine policy disputes? How much of this is politics?
Oh, I think we have to see. You're quite right. You and I remember when Governor Cornejo, as then was, came to Washington, D.C. with us and was very much a leading light of the Macri coalition, Mauricio Macri, the last president, and his Let's Change coalition. Alfredo Cornejo is a leading player and is still so. And I think you're absolutely right. We have to see behind this a political play from a leading opposition figure. He's the leader of the Radical Party, historically the lead opposition in this country. Certainly during the many decades of Peronism. And, ex-Governor Cornejo is seeing the main chance here and is using the groundswell of local sentiment to present opposition to the government. However, at the same time, I think I'm a little surprised, Benjamin, knowing Mendoza and knowing Governor Cornejo, that he has gone quite as far as he has. Because he has floated the idea seriously that Mendoza could and should consider declaring autonomy, going it alone, building an independence. He's used the word independence. And, the people behind the hashtag, who've been at it for quite a while, and the Twitter movement, have been using Brexit from the UK. They've been using Catalonia from Spain. To suggest that now is the time for Mendoza to consider its possibilities. Should be said that under the Argentine constitution, there's absolutely no way that autonomy, independence, secession in any way, shape or form is allowed. So we're talking very much a long-term game, not something that can move in any way, shape or form quickly. But yes, politics are behind it, opposition to this government, the feeling that the government is increasingly controlled by Cristina Fernandez de Kirchner, who has, in Mendoza's view, always used the politics of money and patronage to control.
David, before we conclude, I wonder if you'd indulge me in just a historical interlude. I mean, this Mendo exit concept seems, somewhat outlandish, and it seems to come out of nowhere. But historically, this has been a province with a independent identity. It's closer to Santiago, Chile, across the Andes, than it is to Buenos Aires. It's always been export-oriented with wine in a country that's often protectionist. It's a place that's been wealthy and managed its budget well, in a country known for debt crises. So in a sense, Mendoza has always seen itself as something different than much of Argentina.
Oh, absolutely, Benjamin. I think one of the things that always strikes me about Mendoza is the sense of pride about not being like the rest of Argentina, a sense of real honor about being Mendocino. I think of it, as a young correspondent, I lived in Italy, and I can remember always feeling in Milan and Turin the sense that we're the ones who do, and the rest of the country, particularly in the south, is having a siesta. I've always felt that in Mendoza. Their work ethic is very strong. Their sense of honesty, their ability, for example, to pay their debts. They're the only one of the Argentine provinces that when the country had that historic collapse in 2001, the province of Mendoza paid its debts on its bonds. The only one that did, and they're very, very proud of that. A standout. I think the other thing we have to recognize, your point about Chile is a very important one, is that Mendoza very much sees itself as a land of opportunity, a land of growth, And the way, for example, the wine industry has revolutionized itself in the past 30 years and made Malbec, that Malbec that hopefully you see in Washington, D.C. on your supermarket shelf. It wasn't there 30 years ago. It's because of what Mendoza has done through its revolutionary zeal, its willingness to change, adapt, grow, invest. And now, this is a province that looks at itself and says, we could be the bridge between the Pacific and the Atlantic. There have been plans forever to build a railway, believe it or not, underneath the Andes, underneath Aconcagua, the highest peak in the Americas, and build a train service that would link Brazil on one side and Chile on the other, the Atlantic to the Pacific. Something like 2/3 of land trade, of trade that moves over land between the two, the Atlantic and the Pacific, moves via Mendoza, via Mercosur, that trading bloc, and by the Pacific Alliance that embraces Chile and Colombia and Peru and Mexico and the rest. So Mendoza sees itself, and it's got energy, it's got oil, 15% of the country. The country's oil is in Mendoza. It has a decent IT communication software industry, let alone wine and the agro-business. So therefore there is a sense that Mendoza feels its energy, feels its ability to stand up alone. It should be said, I saw a poll just the other day, a first poll on the feelings of Mendocinos. 35% of them said they would be happy to leave Argentina. 50-odd% said no thanks, which I think is very realistic. But for an embryonic movement like this that has been largely in the Twitter sphere until the former governor Cornejo came out with his call for independent thinking or autonomy, I think 35% is really quite extraordinary from the get-go to have the number of Mendocinos expressing that pride, expressing that belief in themselves in being different from the rest of Argentina and prepared to consider going it alone.
David Smith, special contributor to the Latin American Program's Argentina Project, the Economist correspondent in Argentina. Thank you so much, as always, for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Benjamin.
Thank you for listening to the Argentina Project podcast. This episode was produced and edited by Oscar Cruz. For more on this subject, visit our website, wilsoncenter.org/LAP.